We're talking about Black Friday.
Yeah, we're talking about Black Friday shopping and food and, everything else that we do for Thanksgiving.
But maybe we should talk about movies, huh?
Sounds like a good idea.
Movies are a Thanksgiving
and
thing.
Pam Powell are joining us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming here with your turkey coma still intact.
Yep.
Yeah, movies are a Thanksgiving thing because after you have the meal, and you have that awkward time when you don't really want to talk to your relatives, so you need to see a movie. Just to break that. And, especially if they stayed overnight and they're still, under feet this morning.
So
and for the
are you
weekend,
describing your whole life?
No.
Okay. All right, just wondered.
I've heard.
So
this is what they tell us.
Yeah.
So today we're doing a double feature with this. This is part 1 of 2.
You got it.
Right. So what are we starting with?
What are we?
Front runner?
We got front runner.
Front runner. Yeah, front runner.
All right.
The Front Runner, an interesting story, and I wish it had been a more interesting film, unfortunately. I remember as this all played out, there you see Hugh Jackman, one of my favorite people in the world. If you meet him, you'll know why I say that. He is just a sweetheart of a man and a very talented guy, too. Here he plays Gary Hart, who in 1988 set out on his second presidential campaign, senator from Colorado, and because of his good showing in the 84 campaign, as soon as he enters the 88 campaign, he's considered the front runner. It's going to be a clear path to the White House for this guy. No one is going to stand in his way. It's all over but the shouting until a scandal breaks. And this deals with the 3 weeks of his campaign. His campaign only lasted 3 weeks in 1988, something I had forgotten. He makes an error in judgment in which he goes out on a cruising ship. I don't know if you remember the name of it. It was called the Monkey Business, with a guy who was going to donate some money. He ends up alone with a young lady, and the young lady again shows up at his townhouse in Washington about a week later, and tongues start to wag. And the Miami Herald, of all people, set out to investigate this and come up with what they say is a story of his infidelity. The movie leaves it open as to whether there was actually an affair or not. We're left to draw our own conclusions. And really, that's important because what the film is really about, it's not about the affair, it's about the media coverage. And there you see the Miami Herald people accosting him in the alley of his house, accusing him of things. They go way over the line here, and really they roast the media here, and justifiably so, because it comes out later that their story was not airtight. It's an interesting story. As I say, the film, though, has problems. It's far too fragmented as we go back and forth between what his wife is thinking, what his kids thinking, what his campaign manager is thinking. And we don't get the whole story about Donna Rice either, the young woman who was caught up in all this. We're left hanging as far as what happened to her. The movie just never gets the momentum it needs. It's never as interesting as the story itself was. I wanted to like this more, but it just doesn't quite get there for me.
Yeah, I never. This is before my time. I didn't even know about this.
Well, by today's standards, it's nothing. It is but a drop in the bucket compared to what the scandals are that we see today, even at the White House. So, I'm not quite sure what the main point of the story was, other than to say this is maybe where things started for journalism to become sensationalism and sensationalized stories. And when do you print and when do you not? If you want a story that has a lot more intensity, and this lacked intensity, it lacked focus. You didn't really have a main character to be connected to or attached to. So you never really felt like you were with the story. You felt like you were getting this overall view of everything, which was interesting, but again, just it didn't have a narrative arc. It didn't have the intensity of something like The Post from a few years ago. So if you want to see a movie about newspaper drama, go and see that one.
That is a good one.
Yeah, so that's, even though Gary Hart, is our main character, given that the movie leaves it open, we don't even know if the affair happened or not. I guess you don't get close enough to really connect with him.
We get bits and pieces of information about all the different characters. I like the fact that we did get a little bit of information about Lee Hart, Gary's wife, and why she put up with what she was putting up with. They do allude to the fact that he was definitely having affairs left and right, but we never had any concrete evidence, which I don't think the newspapers did either before the story broke.
Interesting.
So is that the point? That's kind of the point of the...
It's the media, not the affair.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, what about Green Book?
Wow, Green Book. Now here we've got a true story, and we've got a wonderful story from my perspective. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
We hear the chuckles.
Our resident antagonist.
Green Book takes a look at a true story about Dr. Don Shirley, played by Mahershala Ali. I'm just going to say Ali because it's a little easier for me.
This is why I had you introduce
that. And we've got two totally different characters. We've got Viggo Mortensen playing Tony the Lip. He's an Italian guy in New York City. And he uses his brawn, not necessarily his smarts, for everything in order to get by in life. He's out of work at this point, and he is hired to be Dr. Don Shirley, who is a classical pianist, world-renowned, to tour the South. And he's driving him around the South and basically a bit of his bodyguard. Back in the day, back in the 1960s, there was a lot of racism in the South. I'm not sure that we've gone totally past that yet. And they do address the fact that Tony is very prejudiced. He's very narrow-minded. And Viggo Mortensen does a wonderful job of portraying this. And we see the barriers not just on Dr. Don Shirley's side, but also with Tony. And they both have their preconceived notions of each other's lifestyles and who they are. And as they get to know each other, this barrier breaks down, and they have something of tolerance, and then they have something of acceptance, and then they actually have a true friendship. There's great chemistry between these two characters, and it's a story of friendship and love and tolerance and understanding. And I think in today's world, this is a beautiful story, and one that's really well written. There's some comedic elements in it as well. Both of these characters shine, I think, especially Viggo Mortensen in his role as Tony the Lip.
So you think this is something that maybe with today being what it is, people should see?
I think people absolutely should see this. And it also brings up the Green Book. I had no idea that there was this book that anyone who was African American or black had to follow this book of travel when they went to the South. They could only stay at certain hotels, go to certain restaurants. And if they violated that, oh my goodness, you don't want to see what happens.
Yeah.
So, Chuck, you're kind of moving around in your chair there.
Yeah, you're kind of shifting,
disagree with what Pam's saying?
holding your tongue.
I liked it more than I thought I would. Okay. This reminds me a lot of Hidden Figures from a couple years ago. It's a soft approach to a complex issue, and that I have a little bit of problems with. I mean, things aren't always as cut and dry as it seems, and the film has gotten accused of being another white savior film, in which really we're looking at racism through the eyes of a white character instead of a black character. That being said, I would be lying if I said I did not enjoy this film. It is very, very entertaining, and the two guys together, you could sit there and watch them talk all day long, especially Mortensen. I mean, he is fantastic here, completely transforms himself. And this guy, his son goes on, his son was one of the writers of the film. And this guy also was in The Sopranos, Casino, a lot of mob movies. He has actually segued into acting, believe it or not. Yeah. So he had a very interesting life. Beautiful film, period-wise. You think you're back in the 60s. They get everything right as far as that's concerned as well. I like this movie. This would really be a good family movie. I mean, if you want to bring this conversation up, you know, anyone from like 10 or up, I think you'd be okay taking them to this film. And I don't think they'd be bored. Very entertaining movie.
Very good.
All right. And we're going to check back in with you guys in just a little bit because you got two more movies for us.
Yes.
We do.
What are you going to be talking about
Creed
next?
2.
Oh, yes.
And Robin Hood.
Oh, good one.
We'll see what happens with that.
Oh,
Yes, we will.
So keep it here on the X. We'll be right back at about 8:10 with our second segment of today's Friday Flicks.
In just about 20 minutes. We'll be right back. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.